In the Shadow of Justice, the story of a judge and a white man. The city of Chicago thrived under the glow of streetlights and the hum of a restless urban life. Amidst its towering skyscrapers stood the Grand Courthouse, a fortress of justice, adorned with marble columns and an air of solemn authority. Inside, Judge Eleanor Brooks sat in her dimly lit chambers, her desk piled high with case files. The clock ticked past midnight, but sleep was a distant thought. Eleanor had been a judge for over 2 decades, known for her firm yet fair decisions. She carried the weight of the law with grace, her reputation spotless, her integrity unwavering. That night, however, a sense of unease gnawed at her. A case of monumental significance had landed on her docket. It wasn't just the legal implications that made it challenging, it was the societal weight it carried. The case involved Henry Blackwood, a wealthy white businessman, celebrated in the city for his philanthropy but whispered about in private circles for his moral failings. Henry stood accused of a hit-and-run accident that had left a 12-year-old black boy, Marcus Turner, paralyzed from the waist down. The tragedy had rocked the city. Marcus was the youngest of 3 siblings, the son of a single mother, Diane Turner, who worked 2 jobs to make ends meet. The boy's future, once filled with dreams of basketball and college, had been shattered in an instant. The community rallied around the Turners, demanding accountability for the crime. However, many feared that Henry's privilege and wealth would shield him from justice. Protesters gathered outside the courthouse every day, their voices echoing through the city streets. They held signs with slogans like "Justice for Marcus" and "End Privilege, Uphold Justice." For them, this case wasn't just about Marcus, it was about dismantling a system that had historically protected the powerful at the expense of the vulnerable. Inside the courtroom, the tension was palpable. Reporters filled the benches, their notepads ready to capture every word. Activists and community leaders watched with bated breath, hoping for a verdict that would set a precedent. Eleanor, seated high above the room, exuded calm authority, but her mind worked tirelessly, weighing every piece of evidence and argument presented before her. Henry's defense team was among the most expensive and formidable in the country. They portrayed Henry as a kind-hearted man, incapable of such a crime. They presented an alibi supported by several witnesses who claimed he had been at a charity gala miles away when the accident occurred. However, their testimonies seemed rehearsed, and their accounts were riddled with inconsistencies. On the other side, the prosecution, led by Rachel Carter, a fiery and determined young lawyer, presented a damning case. Rachel had grown up in the same neighborhood as Marcus and was deeply invested in seeking justice. She introduced CCTV footage showing a car matching the description of Henry's vehicle speeding away from the scene of the accident. She called witnesses who testified about seeing the same car moments before the crash. Rachel's arguments were sharp, her passion undeniable. The trial stretched on for weeks. Each day, new evidence and testimonies emerged, turning the tide back and forth. Outside the courthouse, the protests grew louder. The case had become a symbol of the fight against systemic inequality, with people from all walks of life joining the movement. One evening, as Eleanor reviewed the day's proceedings in her chambers, an envelope was slipped under her door. Curious and cautious, she opened it to find an anonymous letter. The writer claimed to have been with Henry on the night of the accident. They described how Henry, heavily intoxicated after a party, had insisted on driving despite their protests. The letter included a photograph showing Henry's car at the scene of the crash, its license plate clearly visible. The writer apologized for their silence, explaining that they feared retribution if they came forward publicly. The next day, the photograph was presented as new evidence. The courtroom buzzed with whispers as the image was displayed on the screen. Henry's defense team scrambled to discredit it, but the evidence was undeniable. Combined with the existing testimonies and CCTV footage, it painted a clear picture of Henry's guilt. During closing arguments, Rachel addressed the jury with heartfelt conviction. "This case is not just about Marcus Turner," she said, her voice steady yet emotional. "It is about the countless others like him, people who have suffered because the powerful believe they are untouchable. Today, you have the power to show that justice is not a privilege for the few but a right for all." The jury deliberated for hours before delivering their verdict, guilty on all charges. As the foreperson read the decision, a wave of emotion swept through the courtroom. Diane Turner, seated in the front row, broke into tears, clutching Marcus's hand. The reporters rushed to file their stories, while the crowd outside erupted in cheers, chanting Marcus's name. Eleanor looked at Henry, whose face was drained of its usual arrogance. She addressed him with calm authority. "Mr. Blackwood, this court finds you guilty not only of the crime you committed but also of abusing the power and privilege that you believed would protect you. Today, we affirm that justice cannot be bought. No one is above the law." The sentence was severe: a lengthy prison term and significant financial reparations to Marcus and his family. For the Turners, it was a bittersweet victory. While no amount of money or punishment could undo what had been done, the verdict offered them hope and closure. That evening, as Judge Eleanor Brooks left the courthouse, the weight of the case still lingered. She looked up at the towering building, its shadow stretching across the city. It was a reminder of the responsibility she bore to uphold justice, no matter how powerful the accused. She knew the fight for equality was far from over, but for now, she took solace in knowing that she had done her part. Eleanor walked into the crisp night air, her step steady, her resolve stronger than ever. In the shadow of justice, she stood tall, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead.